Welcome to Liesl's Artistic Studio, a world where creativity blossoms and colors dance on paper. In this tutorial, I will reveal the techniques that will enable you to create stunning, realistic foxgloves that will leave you inspired and in awe of your own artistic abilities. Now, I know right off the bat this all may look a little bit overwhelming. This drawing has a lot of small details to it, but I will go through each part step by step. Now, besides these basic items of paper, water, and paints, for this painting today, we also need some masking fluid, as well as a brush to use in the masking fluid. This here is one of my smaller, not so nice brushes anymore, so that I won't potentially ruin one of my better brushes. Then I have here a medium brush to paint with today. This doesn't have a size number on it, but it is on the smaller side, like maybe about a size 4. And you definitely want to have a pointy tip on your brush that you're using today because we will be painting in some pretty tight areas. Now, in the past, I've been able to provide free outlines to you using a Google Doc that I share through this channel, and I have loved doing that. But as many of you are aware by now, a couple of weeks ago, Google denied me access to my account. I couldn't use my email at all, my YouTube channel was taken down, and this was because they believed I had broken some sort of Google policy. Anyway, after 8 grueling days of research as to what went wrong and several appeals to Google to try to fix the problem, I did finally get my channel back, but long story short, I believe it was actually those Google Docs that I was sharing that was the trigger and the cause of this whole mess. So, because I still want you to have some sort of access to these outlines, I've had to come up with a plan B on how to get the outlines to you, which I will fill you in on in just a little bit. And as a quick side note, any of the information on the supplies I'm using today, including brands and product links, are listed in the description of this video if you're interested in looking into that further. All right, to get started, let's take this small, old, or cheap brush and apply some of this masking fluid. Now, I like to put a little bit of dish soap in my bristles to help making cleaning this out easier when I'm done. Then I'll take the fluid and apply it on the dotted areas on the insides of some of these flowers. Now, a lot of times you can paint around or find other ways so that you don't have to use masking fluid, but I actually tried several different ways already, and for this particular painting, the fluid really does do the best job. So let me pull up a picture here of my reference photo so you can see exactly what this masked off area looks like. I'm really sort of just dabbing this on in dots rather than painting the whole section also. All right, while we let that dry, let's gather up some colors to start painting the greenery for these flowers. So first we're going to get some hooker's green on our tray. Then we'll get some azo yellow. Now, I want to tone down this yellow and make it more of a brown color, so I'm actually also going to add in just a touch of raw sienna. Then I'll take a little bit of that yellow color and paint it in at the tips of the buds, right at the tops of the stalks. Next, I'll take a touch of the hooker's green and blend that in at the bottom halves of those buds. Now, I'm actually not waiting for each bud to completely dry before I paint the one right next to it. So these are going to kind of blend into each other a little bit. Now, I don't mind that too much this time because I'm wanting the focus on this painting to be the flowers at the bottom of the page. But if you'd rather have these buds more crisp and defined, you can wait for each section of the paint to dry before applying more. Either way you choose, try to have some differing values here and there. Have some lighter greens with a little more water and some darker greens with more pigments. Now I'm just going to paint the top of this other stalk in the same way. And as a side note here, if painting both of these stalks feels like too much to do, you can just draw and paint one of them instead of both. The good news is that if you choose to do both, they are going to be painted in the same way with the same colors. All right, I'm going to continue on now painting the rest of the stock and the greenery. A few tips I have for this is to, again, have some light and dark values of the hooker's green to create some dimension and variety. You'll notice that on these bigger green sections and even along the stalks, I'll have a gradient of color. I create this by painting a line of green, then I'll wet my brush a little and spread that color to the rest of the area. The initial paint will stay a little darker and the extra water dilutes and thins the color out. You'll also notice that any of the small little leaves that are along the stalk I have here, I'm just painting a nice, solid, dark green. Nothing fancy to it, and the dark color here and there looks very striking. Another thing you can do to add some variety is add in a touch of yellow to some of the greenery. I'll have some hooker's green near the bottom of the section and then add in some yellow at the top. And last but not least, you'll notice that I will switch back and forth from one stalk to another. I'll paint down a little ways, then move to the next stalk to let the first one dry. Then I'll paint the next one a little ways and move back to the first one to let the second one dry, and so on. I should also probably say that painting the greenery is probably the hardest, most tedious and time-consuming part of this whole painting. So don't give up on it. Take some breaks if you need to, and just focus on one little section at a time. In fact, I myself did not just sit and paint this all in one sitting. One of the reasons why I don't do live tutorials, and also why I have to usually do voiceovers in my videos, is because I have 4 kids that really keep me on my toes. I would start painting this, then I'd have to stop and go pick my kids up from school. I'd come back and paint a little bit more. Then I need to stop and take somebody to volleyball or basketball practice. I'd come back and paint a little more, and then need to help kids with homework, paint a little more, and it's time to make dinner. So you get the idea. Basically, I kind of took the entire course of the day to get this completed, but I did finish it eventually, and I was really pleased with how it turned out. The whole point to this story is that it's okay if you can't or don't want to finish this all in one setting. Take your time and paint at your own pace. Something else I'm going to point out really quick is the way I'm rinsing my brush out today. This Meeden brush wash bowl is really nice because it has 2 built-in water compartments. I normally don't really care if my water is tinted with other colors, but when I'm working with yellow paint, I really like to keep it nice and clean. So today, if I've been painting with green and I want to add in some yellow, I'll rinse my brush on the left side of the container to get the majority of the green paint out of my brush. Then I'll rinse it again a second time on the right side of the container to get any leftover paint or tinted water out of the bristles. This is just a way to help your yellow color or other light valued colors stay bright and pure. All right, congratulations on making it this far and finishing off all that green color. I'm going to go get some fresh water now before moving on to the next step. Okay, I'm going to quickly freshen up and add to this azo yellow mixed with raw sienna. Then we'll get our pinks ready for the flowers. For my pink colors today, I'll be using a watered down and light value of quinacridone rose for the main flower color. Then I'll take some quinacridone rose and mix it with just a touch of dioxazine purple. Now this darker pink purple color will be for the shadow areas on the flowers. Now I'm going to start painting from the top of the stalks moving downwards, starting with the buds. These very top buds are going to be painted with just some pure yellow color, no mixing or blending. Now that I've painted several pure yellow buds, I'm going to start adding in just a touch of light pink onto the tops of the next few buds, after which I'll paint the second stalk in a similar way. All right, now let's paint some of these buds that are starting to open slightly. This time, we're going to start by painting some light and watered down quinacridone rose from the top of the bud to about half or 3/4 of the way down the bud. Then we'll add in some yellow for the bottom half of it, allowing the two colors to blend slightly together where they touch. Then we'll take a small amount of that darker purple pink color and using the very tip of the brush, we'll paint in a line or two of color along the center of the bud. And maybe we could even add a little where the bud meets the greenery to create a little bit of a shadow. In fact, let's go ahead and paint all of the flowers this way that are facing that side profile view. All right, now I promised at the beginning of this video I would figure out a plan B as to the best way for me to get you these outlines. And after a lot of thought, I decided it best to do this through my Etsy shop. So there's good news and bad news to this. The bad news is that I can't sell it for free, even though I'd like to, just because I still have to pay for Etsy fees for any listings or sales I have. But the good news is it's easy to access, it's not going to cause a problem and get my channel taken away, and I have all my other outlines from the past available there. The best part is I am prepared to drop the price of this foxglove outline by 45% for one whole week, which makes it cost only 85 cents. This is less than you can buy a candy bar for. So even though it's not ideal, it's the best I can do, and I hope that you'll all understand. I'll have a link to my Etsy shop in the description of this video if you're interested. And as a side note, I know some of you might be hesitant about Etsy because you don't know how to download the files. But I am right now in the process of creating a video that walks you through how to download these step by step, and I'm going to have that out very soon. Okay, well done. It's finally time to paint what I think is the main focus of this painting, the flowers with the center wide open view. So let's start this by painting the very back side or the bell of the flower. Then we'll save the center for last. So we're basically going to paint this in the same way as we just did, but we want the colors this time to be a little darker and a little brighter. So use more of a concentrated or pigmented paint. The other difference here is that we're not going to be adding any yellow this time. We're just using the pink, and then we'll use the purple pink for the lines and shadows. All right, let's paint the very centers of these flowers now. So this is going to again be painted in a similar way as we just did, but this time we're wanting to create sort of a gradient of color. We'll start by painting some quinacridone rose right at the top of the opening, but not painting the very lip or the edge quite yet. Then we'll wet and dry our brush and use the damp brush to spread and lighten the color down to the bottom of the opening. Then while all that paint is still wet, we'll take the darker pink-purple color and paint that in right at the top, and maybe even adding in a line or two of color down the center. After all that paint is dry, now we can add in a super light pink color on all of the outer lips. We really want this to be light. In fact, you might even be able to just use your tinted water in your brush wash bowl for this if you want. It's now time to finally take off the masking fluid that we painted on right at the beginning. You can use an eraser or a finger to rub it off, but before you do this, you really want to make sure all of the paint is super dry on your painting. If you try to rub it while the paint is still damp, it can smear and smudge your work, which is so frustrating, especially when you're almost done. When all of the fluid is off, let's lighten up some of this leftover yellow color that's still on our tray with some extra water. Then paint all of those little white spaces on the insides of the flowers with this really light yellow color. Now while we let that dry, let's take a bit of this darker pink and paint in a few spots on the bottom half or the more yellowed areas of these flowers that show the side or the underside of the flower. Now for the final finishing touch to this painting, Let's take some deoxazine purple and paint some spots on top of the yellow areas on the insides of the flowers. Now make sure that your yellow color is completely dry before doing this. We want to have nice, dark, crisp spots of color. And that's it for these stunning and realistic looking watercolor foxgloves. I hope you had some fun learning how to paint these, and I hope you feel proud of what you've been able to accomplish. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.